Anyways, Caleb, that was the only reason why you couldn't make 9. You're just trying to get some runs in. It's your
A little bit of a stress reliever. You know what I mean?
Sure. No, I feel you.
So I did 9 miles, and
oh my God, seriously?
yeah, I did.
Wow.
I did almost 14 on Sunday, or no, Saturday, and then 9 tonight.
Dude, keep that shit up. You're gonna be able to beat me. Good night.
No, that's not gonna happen. I shaved 5 minutes off my 9-mile time though. I was pretty happy about that. Pretty stoked. Went from an hour 36 to an hour, an hour 36 to an hour 31.
So if you don't mind me asking, like, is this just something that are you and Alex just trying to do better?
No.
Or is it just you?
Just me. And I think the goal is just I got to the point where I need to start acting more on my personal philosophy. And right now that large focus is right, personal responsibility and improving oneself. And when we talk about improving oneself, right, a lot of people are like, well, I need to lose weight, or I need to do this, or I need to do that. Mine is pretty simple. It's to get off my ass. I need to get up and I need to go do something. And for whatever reason, running for an hour to 2 hours is working for me. And it does a couple of things, right? It allows me to listen to a podcast. It allows me to unplug. Even though I'm listening to a podcast, I'm still like, I'm not worried about somebody calling me, texting me, emailing me. I'm not worried about work. I'm not worried about anything. I'm just running. So I don't know. It's a culmination of a few things too, right? I think that one of the biggest struggles that we have as humans is this idea of how you find meaning in life, right? Some people find it in their work. Some people find it in their relationships. Some people find it in a hobby. But for most of us, in my opinion, most of us just need to constantly be mentally and physically challenged, and it doesn't have to be every day. And
I think that's right.
To be, you don't have to work out every day. You don't have to read a book a day, but
challenges give you purpose, I feel. But go ahead,
Right, to read a chapter of a book, to go on one run, to do one workout, to find where your boundary is and step over it very briefly.
Right.
So that you can realize that being hurt a little bit or failing is not necessarily a bad thing.
Dude, especially in the last couple of years, I've increasingly had discussions with people about how adversity is a good thing. Like, I just don't see that as a bad thing, especially if you are the kind of person that is learning and doing better because of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, look, nobody thinks that anybody's going to be born one day and everything they do is perfect, except if you're Jesus Christ and the few people that think he did perfect things. Like, no. So adversity is going to make you be a better person. It's going to allow you to learn how to navigate life, how to do things in a more efficient, better way. I see adversity as
spoke about that, or maybe it was Chad and I, but we kind of talked a little bit about this before, and that's the idea of even evolutionarily, right? The way that our ancestors, how we became as humans, was through adversity.
Sure.
Right? We through nature, through whatever situations happened, whether it be a natural disaster or whatever the case may be, adversity. You had to constantly overcome adversity. I think as humans we're built, right? Actually, most animals, but humans specifically have a very different consciousness and thought process towards it. And it's instead of just being able to see, or instead of just taking whatever nature's throwing at you, we've gotten to the point now in humanity where you can live such a cushy life that you feel stagnant. And I think this is a lot of problem with, especially in my opinion, middle-aged white males, very particularly, right? You become stagnant in your career, you become stagnant in your relationships, you have no idea what the hell's going on, you feel completely out of place. And the only thing that seems to give people purpose is challenges of some sort. I think that's why Tough Mudders are so popular, and marathons, and you name it, any sort of physical challenge that people are like, wow, you're an idiot. Like, why would you do that? It makes sense to me right now because I'm like, oh, okay, you've established a goal, you've had to overcome some level of adversity to achieve this goal, and it gives you purpose in life. You know,
Right.
and I think that's what's interesting as well as, and I'm going to go way off the deep end right now, but
Sure.
it's also my thought process towards why young men can be so dangerous, right? Because without purpose, without anything, any level of purpose, whether that's a relationship, a job, a career, whatever the case may be, it's easy to become attracted to extremist groups like ISIS
Sure.
or like the KKK, because
Or
they
even
give you a purpose. They give, or gang,
right.
they give you that purpose, that level of fraternity.
Or even if we keep it modern, these young guys, because it's never a young girl, these young guys who shoot up whatever, right? Like who get ostracized by their community and they feel like, well, let me just go on the internet and see all these things, and now I've decided to shoot up a high school in Florida. Like, what are you doing?
Well, you're doing that
So
because of well, it's also an identity thing, I think,
sure.
right? When it comes to white people specifically, you know, and,
Yeah,
and I'm
maybe.
not making any excuse for them by any stretch of any imagination,
No,
but I think a lot of white people look around and go, huh, you know, things are becoming a bit uncomfortable for me, but that's because they've never been in a situation where they weren't uh,
right.
the majority, right? And that's a new place
Right.
for them. And I'm not justifying that. I'm merely saying,
Right.
you know, that can be dangerous. And
Yeah,
when
it
you're
can be.
exposed to very dangerous
can be.
ideologies as well. I mean, everybody's like,
Disenfranchised.
thank you.
It's when
Perfect word.
people just feel absolutely disconnected from their society, and they like so very much want to be part of it, but they're absolutely rejected. And again, this is not to justify what these people have done. They've done horrible, horrible things. Because there are a lot of people who feel disenfranchised, and they don't do these horrible things. They just kind of deal with it, and they live with it. It's only those people who are in the fringe that are following either bad ideologies and fall into like say ISIS or some other type of dogmatic bullshit, or you just do these lone wolf type shootings because for some reason that's your ultimate fuck you to society, is just to ruin as much as you can before you leave, because fuck it, what was it all worth? Like,
Right.
that's
And I'm always thinking about reasons why things are, right? And so your boy was in Afghanistan twice.
sure.
And I saw a lot of just like differences between cultures, right? Stark differences. And there's a lot of reasons for them. Do not get me wrong. There's a whole lot of reasons for them. But I want to focus on one thing. I didn't see a whole lot of progress and opportunity in those countries. And I think that's a big variable. If you're a young guy and your biggest opportunity is to just go to the mosque and listen to some preacher and get fired up, and like besides that, your opportunity in life is very small, what do you think they're going to do? What the hell do you think they're going to do? They're going to go to the place that has the opportunity, that has that, charismatic leader that is obviously lying and BSing his followers, but still they are drawn to him, and they're gonna be like, this guy's making me feel like I have purpose. Caleb's right. You know, like he makes me feel like I have purpose. And if there's nothing else that fulfills that, what in the world do you think is going to happen?
Especially something
we
as
all know
powerful
after
as that,
yeah.
you can get involved with, if you can truly believe and be part of something like that, that is like,
that's a powerful tool
drug
for your mind.
it's like a
right.
drug.
It is. And we all know, I assume, what the Monroe Doctrine was, right? Like, so after World War II, the U.S. realized, look, if we don't get in there and prop up these Western European economies that are devastated from World War II, then communism is going to sweep in and leave a huge footprint. Why don't we go in there? The Monroe Doctrine was, let's invest money in the Great Britons, in the Frances, in the all these countries in Western Europe, the Germany, all these places, and say like, hey, let's put money in there so that we can give them some incentive, some look at opportunity to make sure that they don't fall in the clutches of things that are inherently more evil. I believe communism is inherently more evil than capitalism. Things that are inherently more evil than otherwise, and it works. It works, and the idea that, and I know it's easy to look back on things. It's so easy to do that, and I'm not minimalizing anything or any reasoning why this happened. But when you take out a Saddam from Iraq, when you're President Bush, and then the next president says, how about we just leave? that's going to cause problems because that guy, no matter what he did, the atrocities he did, there's no question he did them. And there's almost no question he should have been, hanged. Like he's a turd.
Well,
but
if I'm not mistaken, he
it
was hung,
wasn't
right?
all cons, right? Like he did some things to present opportunity and stability in the region that was gone afterwards. And guess
Stability
what
at what cost?
ISIL happens.
That's the
Be
question,
surprised.
right?
That is the question.
Well,
though.
even before
Right.
ISIL, even before ISIS, whatever you want to call them, right?
Sure.
There's still major
ISIS,
atrocities
whatever.
occurring, unfortunately.
There
Well,
were.
So to Chad's
And-
point, at what cost?
right.
And that's not wrong, but if we asked an expert, which one of these days, if we're legitimate, we should do that. If we asked an expert, the atrocities that happened before and the stability and the way the regime ran things compared to ISIS running things, like, I don't know. I'm not an expert and I'm not going to say this is true, but it don't sound like the aftermath was better than what came before it. And the pros and cons are a real thing. We can't live in this world where we act like everything needs to be a utopia. That's bullshit. It's not going to be. And you have to be culturally sensitive. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't just romp into some place and act like they're going to be the next America when culturally and everything that led up to that point just doesn't make sense that way. You can't just come in there with a wrecking ball and say, we can be better because we know you can. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that practically that's probably not the right thing to do. That's all. So that matters. It does matter.
Yeah.
So that's at least it for me. Anyways, oh man, we always go off on tangents. That was a great one.
Point there though is that
Yeah, go ahead.
That was a hard tangent.
It's
That was a hard
something
tangent.
that's missing from a lot of people's lives, and I'm talking about from a first
is.
world perspective.
Absolutely.
a sense of purpose, and I think
That sounds like a bunch of crybabies to me.
what
Oh, fuck
a
off.
sense
with
of
that.
purpose. A sense of purpose is innately human.
No, not a sense of purpose.
Oh.
Excuse me. Do not get me wrong. That is absolutely not. That is something that everybody needs. There's no question about it.
Okay, what do you say?
What sounds like a little crybaby to me, and it's probably because they live in the environment they live in and they're affected by that. And I can't sit here and blame anybody for that. But what sounds like crybaby to me is, I don't care if you're the poorest person in America. This is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, and most free country to live in on this planet, still to this day.
Sure.
If you want to put in some blood, sweat, and tears, clean yourself up, meet the right people, you're going to go places. Maybe not to the top, but you're going to go places that are productive.
Sure, there
So I don't wanna
absolutely
hear-
are opportunities.
I don't want to hear that, like, not that I don't want to hear. I just admitted that people can live in their environment and it is what it is. But, like, it's tough for me to listen to people be like, oh, woe
Some
is
people-
me in
some
America. It's like, really?
Well, no, but
Okay, so the struggle is different, right? So in
It
a
is.
place like Syria, the opportunity is not there, and that sucks. The
Sure.
struggle, though, in America is the opportunity is there, and some people just can't get themselves there, and they hate, like they end up becoming really bitter and hating themselves for that. I think that is what the issue is. It's definitely a different kind of struggle, but it's a struggle nonetheless.
Right, and that's poisonous. That's fair.
It
But
can
my
be,
question to you would
especially
be,
if people
why
get
can't
themselves
they
stuck.
get? My question
ask
to you would be,
yourself
why
why
can't they
Randy
get that opportunity?
You remember when our father tried to go back? He tried to take night classes so he could actually become a teacher instead of just being a teacher's assistant at RSD. And what happened to him? The man got burned out. He's stuck.
He burned out.
Stuck because he has to work his ass off just to support where his family's at right now.
But why does he have to do that? It's because he has an inherent disability that puts him at a disadvantage from most of the
My point is
populace.
that some people get stuck.
Sure. Yes. So that goes back to the question I just asked before you started. Why do you get stuck? That's the real.
Sure.
But wait,
No,
let's go back.
obviously.
Hold on. Let's go back even
Obviously.
farther. Let's go back even
Sure.
farther and even deeper. And that is
Do it.
that somebody in Syria or somebody in a third world country, right? What do you think they have to do to get nourishment for the day?
Oh, I don't even know.
Probably go visit the UN tent or the Red Cross tent. I don't know.
Not everybody.
How much time do you think they spend retrieving water or retrieving food? The average person in a third world country.
I don't know, man. I really don't know.
It's
if I'm gonna
definitely a
guess,
lot
how many
harder
people
than
def-
us.
Significantly more than us. Is that a fair
lot.
statement?
Yeah, that is a super fair statement. A lot.
When
I
you
just
don't have to
maybe.
hold on, when you don't have to work so hard for basic necessities,
purpose is lost.
your purpose is that much more important.
Mm.
that much more important because I'm not busy focused on getting food and water and clothing and shelter. I don't have to focus on any of those things.
Right.
I can focus on something that actually gives me a sense of purpose. And if you don't know how to find that, that's why, in my opinion, we have an opioid crisis. That's why, in my opinion, we have a pharmaceutical problem.
Right. That's a big variable.
That's why we have a gang problem.
So then my pressing question
to a
would be,
different degree.
if we look at
That's slightly different, but we can
Caleb
explore that
brings up
someday.
a good point.
Well, it does connect there, though.
It
When we
does,
look-
but it's slightly different in my opinion for that. That's that's a lot of cultural thing as well. There's a lot
When
of
we look at
cultural
it-
things going
I don't
on.
think so. I think it's an escapism thing.
Mhm.
Is what I was saying.
Sure.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, no,
It's
yeah,
again,
no,
it's
you're
that
right.
finding that place, finding that purpose, finding that something. When you don't have when you have nothing, you're gonna take anything that gives you that immense sense of like belongingness and pride and purpose.
Right.
But
when
for
we
me,
look-
in this case, I would go all the way back even to the what was it, the Jihadi Johns?
Mhm.
You've
Oh,
got guys
yeah.
that were taken
Oh,
into
yeah.
Britain, given every single reason to love the West. And honestly,
Yeah,
they were accepted by a country. They were given schooling. They were given homes. They were given the opportunity to assimilate into Western culture. And what did they ultimately do? Why? That's the question. Why? Why did they do
You know
that?
what I'll say is Fight Club.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
know what I'm talking about
Yep,
there. Because there's
100%.
an argument to be made, but obviously going towards that type of dogmatic ideology, like that's clearly not a good answer. If that's what you think your answer is, you're gonna have a bad time. So fair enough. If you want to move from a London or from a New York City to a Syria, that is certainly your prerogative. But I think a lot of those people might end up having buyer's remorse.
Sure. But my question always is why? What is it that says
Sure.
I am going to leave a place where I can consume alcohol freely, I can watch sports, I can pursue any passion just about.
Sure, but I mean, this opens up into a much larger conversation about like to what extent can you find sense and purpose in just what modern life has to offer, especially things that are the sports and the drinking alcohol and the smoking a little weed. Or
So if I go back, to the
yeah.
evolutionary perspective on this, it is just now in the past 100, 200, 300 years that people had the luxury to do things like this. So I think
more
people
so, yeah.
just don't know how to do it, right? Because
Fair
I would
enough.
argue, you look at the three of us, and we tend to take something that we can be passionate about, and we definitely have a different perspective, I think, than most people. And where do you think that comes from? For me, I look at our dad, right? Not everybody had Randy Dunham as a father.
Sure.
Or they don't know how to explore and how to find out things that they want to pursue in their passions and et cetera, et cetera. Right? You have to learn how to do that. If you never learn how to do that, then what? Then you get out there and you work your shitty 9-to-5 dead-end job or whatever the case may be, and then what?
Then you got kids to feed, and then you don't have time to.
And then all of a sudden you're sitting on a couch telling somebody you barely know your quote-unquote life problems when all you really need is a couple of buddies and a few beers.
All you really need is just have some foresight in your life.
Well,
some people fall into traps. I think
True.
that's the worst feeling in life. The worst feeling you can ever feel in life is hating where you're at and feeling like you're completely stuck. That has to suck. That has to be like standing in a 6-foot shallow dug grave. Just fucking counting the days. That's got to be the worst. So
Right.
I get that sentiment, and I get that hopelessness. It amazes me, though, that people as young as like 17, 18, 19 will feel that and then join these far whatever type ideologies.
The numbers matter
Crazy.
too, though. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say I don't. I'm not gonna say it doesn't happen, but you'd have to show me the numbers on where like not even a majority, but like a healthy number of people are like joining ISIS and like
okay.
No.
Hold on.
Very
far
obvious that
right
there aren't.
and like white supremacists. Like there's not.
There's
Charlottesville literally had like 300 people march. Like give me a
Right.
break. I'm not worried about that. Go ahead.
I got you. But for me, my point specifically is with dangerous pharmaceuticals like opioids and depression and
Yeah,
anxiety pills
that's
and that
bad.
stuff.
That's right.
To me, that's where I would point and say, here's your indicator.
Yep.
Right?
And
Here's
that's-
your number.
Sure.
So,
And
yeah. And I would follow up with this question. That's absolutely correct. That is something I cannot disagree with. Let's ask ourselves this. And I don't have an answer. I don't know why. Why is it that the opioid crisis hits rural areas more, hits the West Virginias more? Does anybody even have a speculative idea why? Like, what is going on?
Work and the lack of.
Okay, so what should be going on to make more opportunity and jobs in that area? Like, what's the answer?
Right? This is where government needs to. I don't want to say step in, but I want to say try to find ways to incentivize the spurring of development, right? Of some type of development. Number two, there's also, and right, my favorite thing, boys, this level of personal responsibility. If you recognize the fact that your town is a shithole, you need to move. You need to go find opportunity. You also can't just sit there and expect that the government is going to come save your town of 50 people. Like, that's also unrealistic.
Right.
See what I'm saying?
Right.
So there's a mix of both, right? We have to identify.
There is a mix of both, which is why it's a complicated question when I ask, because I don't know the answer. I don't really know what should be done. I know what shouldn't be done, and I'm sick of the,
bring back coal.
Let's just, no, I'm not even sick of that. I don't care. Listen, we'll science our way out of global, no, honestly, we'll science our way out of global warming.
Don't say that.
Oh, we'll science our way out of it. I'm over it. Here's my point.
Here's my point. Hearing that.
Whoa, then Chad's going to hate me all the time because I say that all the time.
I know you do. We've talked about it.
Yeah, we have.
That's such a lazy attitude.
Oh, well. Is it lazy or is it practical?
No, it's lazy. I mean, we don't need to make changes to our current habits. Fuck it. It'll be solved. That's lazy. Dude, that's exactly what happened to our parents' generation. Because for years, how long have they been being told, dude, we're fucking polluting the planet. We're cutting down the rainforest. This shit kind of sucks. We shouldn't do it.
Sure.
And they're just like, science will be.
Hold on. What makes you think our generation is going to be any different than our parents' generation?
That's what I'm saying. That's why. That's literally my point. Cyril's saying, "Oh, science will do science things."
What I'm saying, what I'm saying is, you're sitting here saying we need to take a different perspective. We need to take a look at this. We need to take a stand. No, it's not going to happen. We're humans, just like the last 80,000 generations.
No,
right.
I'm not.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
I'm not saying we're not going to do it. We clearly very much are doing it.
So,
I'm saying that's a lazy attitude.
If I can
tell me that it's happening, I'm aware that it's happening.
I should have brought that up. That was a grenade I lobbed, and I shouldn't have done that. If I can circle it back around.
That's a bit.
Grenades.
I get sick and tired of.
Holster your weapon, sir.
The answer. I get sick and tired of the answer to the opioid crisis, and we're seeing this a lot with. I've read up on some of the primaries that happened today in West Virginia and the Republican candidates that are there. We're seeing this a lot with Republican candidates specifically and Jeff Sessions. I get so sick of the answer to that kind of stuff being lock them up, right? Oh, mandatory minimums. Oh,
death sentences.
Lock the drug dealers up. Lock the users up.
Trump said that.
Straight dumb. How about you create some fucking opportunity for the area? How about you invest in education? Invest in the kids there. Invest in the community.
I think
Stop with this take freedoms away from people for simple usage of drugs. That is dumb. That is where the party infuriates me. Go ahead.
Let's take another step there and say, right, because I do agree that we should prosecute dealers, right? But we need to also define we need to define what a dealer is, because to me a dealer, right, the actual pharmaceutical industry itself has a large stake in this. And that needs to be pointed out, and somebody needs to say, hey, this is completely inappropriate. Right? Why do we have commercials for antidepressants?
That is so stupid.
Right? Why do we have... if I'm not mistaken, we're one of the only countries, if not the only country, that has...
We are the only. That is correct.
Yep. Right? Who is saying... Who's sitting here and saying, yeah, this is a good idea. Let's advertise for shit that you probably don't have.
Yeah, I don't.
Right, especially with something as powerful as the mind, and how easily it's so powerful, but it can be manipulated so easily.
This
that
is
it makes
where
it that much more dangerous when it comes to these psychiatric medication.
This is where and if either one of you chafe at this, that's fine. Just tell me why. This is where regulation steps in. This is where unfettered capitalism doesn't work. We can't just be all about the bottom line. We need to not be all about the bottom line, because there are pros to that and there are some significant cons to that to society. This is where, and me and Caleb talked about this, I think it was last night. This is where leadership matters. Capitalism is a great and the best thing that we can do for society today, but that doesn't mean it should be unregulated. And the idea that we see some executive orders these days being written where, oh, if we have one new regulation, 2 have to be eliminated. Oh, they just have to be, is the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life. The idea that the EPA with Scott Pruitt is like just dismantling regulations without really looking through them and really, I don't know, just like it feels like knowing what they do. We can't be about this. We have to understand that, yes, capitalism is the way to go. But yes, also that can be a bad thing sometimes, and we need to control it. There's a give and take. We can't just sit here and act like the submission to just profits isn't a big cause to those commercials airing, Caleb. We can't turn a blind eye to that. We just can't. That's a big variable. We need to stop this shit, especially stop. And this is why I wrote on the unified website that healthcare should be nonprofit. If we don't want it to be single payer, fine. I'm about it, but we can have a conversation where it's not. But we need to understand that healthcare shouldn't be a profit. End of story. Anybody that tells them
how do you fund research, right? That, like, to me, what
with government
should be happening.
Government.
Yeah, but where do you get that money from?
Don't they
Taxes.
already fund
Because guess what? If you make it in society and make a whole bunch of money, how about you invest in society?
Here's what I'm saying. There's a simple, like, to me, the easy way to do it is to say, okay, let's say 40% of your net profit needs to be invested in R&D by the company.
So is that a regulation you're going to make?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
That's a regulation,
okay,
absolutely. But what I'm saying is you're at least allowing that company to have a say in what they're researching.
Fine.
What I'm saying is that there's happy
that's a good
mediums to this that I feel like nobody's taking a look at. Like, yes, we're saying you have to use this money differently and not put it in your pocket, but at least you get a say as to how it is used. I feel like that's a fair way to go about it.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's a good compromise. I do. I think that the way
I also think there's some other stuff too, right? Which should be happening, right, is the CDC, in my very humble opinion, should be doing things like, okay, what is the average usage of a given drug? Right?
Right.
And let's talk about antidepressants specifically.
Okay.
Most likely, what should be an average use of the drug, according to a population standard, should be X. Let's say it's 5%.
Sure.
Right? I'm just going to make up a number. Shouldn't we then just look at the companies and say, okay, you can only make 6% population worth of this drug?
Using data.
Using hard evidence and data to fill in those gaps, to say, okay,
great. That sounds great.
you can't do this. Because then if I'm making 25% of the population, I could give 25% of the population this drug, where do you think that extra 20% is going? It doesn't just sit on shelves.
Right.
Right.
Well, and
there needs to be strong. Hang on, Chad. Let me just finish with this.
Sure.
When we talk about selling shoes, and we know that it doesn't necessarily, not even necessarily, we know it doesn't have a detriment on society. We don't have to regulate the selling of shoes. I don't care. Do what you need to do. Make the shoes you want to make. Hang on, let me finish.
Hold on. Those products easily self-regulate. I just want to point that out.
And that's fine. And that's what I was getting to. You're absolutely right. Because it doesn't. But when we talk about things like healthcare, and especially the opioid crisis, where it can have a significant harm on society, the idea that it should be deregulated or live in a market where it just worships profits is the most insanely dumb thing I've ever heard. And it needs to stop. It needs to stop yesterday. And if you're Trump or anybody who comes after him and you really want to fix the problem, you need to address that number one. I don't want to hear anything else. Number one, you need to address that. And Caleb, you've even mentioned some things you can do to address that. And I agree with them. They're good compromises. They are. But they're not being done. They're not. And the idea that we're straight dismantling, I'm at a point in 2018 where when I think about Obamacare, I don't think about it negatively. There might be some people, and a lot of people that still do. But like, really, like, when we look at these issues, how can you tell me that everything about Obamacare was crap and everything about Obamacare wasn't good or it just wasn't good in general? Like, how can you do that? And how can you take that away from people when I at least admit, I don't know if you guys do that or not, that's fine. But I'm saying that in that realm, in that healthcare realm, we really need to reevaluate things as far as profit worshiping. We need to stop doing that. We need to pool together money as a unit, as Americans, to make sure that we can fight against these things that are dangerous. Like when we talk about the opioid crisis, once again, these are very addictive drugs. These are drugs that get out of control. They get in the wrong hands very easily. And if you profit worship, the more that goes out the door for the pharmacy, the better for them. What are we doing? Why do we let them do that? It is mind-boggling that we do that. And it's stupid. So, anyways. Marinate on that. No response?
Yeah,
All right, sounds good.
No. We need to. I mean, I feel like right there you could have cut the podcast when you do your edit, but
yeah, I can. You can edit, Chad. Go for it. No, it's just.
There's so much to talk about. There's so much to unpack. Every time we start talking, I feel like once you hit hour 1, like once we've got an hour in, it's like,
great.
uh-oh.
That was great.
Uh-oh. But here's the problem is that we went
that was great.
It was great.
Oh, who cares?
I care.
Sorry about that.
Well, I care because, like, okay, generally speaking, a lot of what we have to say we generally agree with.
Should I stop the broadcast? Yeah, you can go ahead. Go ahead.